Okay, so according to my clock, it's time to start. So since we have a relatively short session, I'll go ahead and start. So as usual, we'll begin with just a short period of time to settle down our minds and generate a positive motivation for participating in this class. And today is a special day. It's Earth Day. And so this started back in 1970. So it's been more than 50 years now since the people have been celebrating Earth Day. And the purpose was to honor the earth and the whole idea of peace on earth. And we're particularly fortunate now that we have a president who does care about the earth and climate change and is going to do whatever is possible to improve things. Yes, really needed. So I thought we could keep that in mind and make that part of our motivation to dedicate our session this morning to our planet and to all the people and the beings inhabiting it. So really wish them to have peace, happiness, well-being, freedom from suffering and negativity. And if you're comfortable with the idea of enlightenment, you can include that as well, wishing all people and beings to reach enlightenment as quickly as possible. Okay, so again, let's just sit quietly for a couple of minutes. So let your body be comfortable, as free of tension as possible. Let your breathing flow in and out in a natural way. Be aware of the breath coming in and going out. Be aware of how fortunate we are that we are able to breathe, because breath is life. As long as we can breathe, we can continue living, doing good for ourselves, for others, for the world. So we're really fortunate that we can breathe. And let your mind settle down. Just in case there are thoughts in your mind that aren't related to what we're doing right now. You might be thinking about something from the past or the future or some other place. So put those thoughts aside for now and decide that you'll do the best you can to just stay focused, concentrated on what we're doing for the next hour. And again, remember why we're here. We want to do things that are beneficial, helpful, not harmful to ourselves, to other people and beings, to the planet, the whole world, to the universe. So what's helpful, according to Buddhism, is to do what is virtuous and positive, practicing ethics, compassion, kindness, wisdom. So cultivating these qualities and acting according to them as much as possible. So try to feel or think that you're joining this session to learn more about this, how to make your life more ethical, more positive, more beneficial for yourselves, for others, for everyone, everywhere. Okay, so Venerable Dunlop, can you put the slides up? So this is our fourth class in the series on the Lam Rim. And what we're going to look at today are making offerings, and then continuing to look at the topic of the precious human rebirth, the 10 opportunities or fortunes of a precious human rebirth, its importance and its rarity, how difficult it is to have such a life. Okay, so first of all, the next slide, please. I previously started talking about preliminary practices that are done prior to meditation on Lam Rim. And the purpose of preliminary practices is to nourish our mind, to make our mind in a better state, to be able to actually transform and gain realizations of the path, the Lam Rim, the path to enlightenment. And so the first preliminary practice was cleaning the room and setting up an altar. We talked about that last week. And the second preliminary is making offerings on your altar. So what's the purpose of doing this? Well, there's two. One is to create merit. Merit is like positive energy, good energy that is the cause of happiness, the cause of good experiences, and whatever higher goals we wish to attain, like nirvana, enlightenment, and so on. So to attain those goals, and even to attain happiness in this life and future lives, we need merit. Merit is like positive energy. So it's said that making offerings is one of the best ways to accumulate merit. And we all know the practice of giving. I'm sure we all give to people who are in need. We give donations to charity and so on, give food to those who are hungry. So we know that practice of giving. But in addition to giving to people and beings who are in need, in Buddhism, we also give to the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. This will be explained more later, what the three jewels are. That's one of the coming topics. But the Buddha, at least, and then other holy beings like our teachers and so on. So making offerings to them is a very positive thing to do, a very virtuous thing to do. And if you've traveled to Asia, like in India or in Indonesia, for example, if you've been to Bali, in those countries, in the early morning, you'll probably see people going to their local temple bearing beautiful offerings, beautiful flowers and fruits and candles and so forth. So it's quite a tradition in the East, in Asia. And so this is something that's good to do for us as well. And this photo shows an altar with the traditional setup. And in the Tibetan tradition, there's the practice of offering 7 bowls of water on the altar, filling these each morning and emptying them at night. And these represent different kinds of offerings, such as flowers and fruits and lights and incense and so forth. And we don't have time here to go into that explanation of how to do this. And probably some of you know already, but anyone who is interested, I did find a YouTube video of Venerable Children showing how to make the 7 bowls of offerings. So I put the link on the homework sheet that you can download later if you want to watch that and learn how to make these offerings. Otherwise, you can just put whatever, the offerings should be nice, good quality, not moldy fruit or withered flowers. So they should be nice and fresh. And so you can put fruit, biscuits, cookies, chocolate, beautiful flowers, candles, and so on. So whatever you think is nice and beautiful to put on the altar. And another benefit or purpose in making offerings is to decrease our attachment because we tend to have attachment to nice things and feel, oh, this is mine and I don't want to give it to anybody else. So making offerings and also giving to sentient beings is a way of decreasing our attachment and our self-centeredness, our possessiveness. And I was thinking of an incident. I was once with a Lama, just having a conversation with him, and his attendant came in with a cake that someone had just brought. It was like a freshly baked cake, and gave it to the Lama. And he immediately stood up and brought the cake over to his altar and put it on his altar. And for me, that was a great teaching, because I tend to think, ooh, a cake, yum, yum, yum. But, his attitude was very different. Oh, a cake, I will offer this to the Buddha. So after that, I did that myself. I tried to make a practice of that, when I received some nice thing, to first offer it to the Buddha. I mean, you don't leave it on your altar forever and ever and ever. You take it down after a day or so, and then you can eat it. But to first think of the Buddha, our object of refuge, and offer it to him. It's a good way to decrease attachment. So the second bullet point says the offering should be nice and fresh and acquired ethically. So it wouldn't be right to steal things and then offer them to the Buddha, or to use any other deceptive means like lying, cheating, manipulating, extortion, bullying to get things and then offer those to the Buddha. So we should acquire the offerings in a straightforward, honest, and ethical way. Otherwise, the offerings become kind of tainted. And then the third bullet point, offer them to the Buddha, and so forth. So, we have the Buddha and our teachers and, well, the whole object, all the objects of refuge, which we'll look at later when we get to the topic of refuge. And the motivation that we have for making offerings should also be pure, wanting to benefit all beings. So we think, I'm making these offerings to the Buddha so that I can develop myself along the path and eventually become a bodhisattva and then a Buddha and be able to help all living beings. And so we should try to avoid a motivation like worldly gain. It's possible, somebody might want to show off how generous they are or how wealthy they are and make very lavish offerings on their altar, just to impress people. So that wouldn't be a good motivation. Yeah. Okay, then next slide. So to go on to the third of the preliminary practices, which you read about if you did the reading I requested last week, to sit down and motivate. Okay, so after cleaning the room, making the altar, putting offerings on the altar, then you sit down and generate a positive motivation. And so it's recommended to sit in a particular posture. Sometimes it's called the 7-point posture. Sometimes it's called the 8-point. The eighth is the breathing. So that was explained in the book. I'm not going to go through it. It was in the book, The Easy Path. And it's also in my book, How to Meditate, if you have that. And probably most of you have attended meditation classes. So, you would have learned the correct posture. And if you can't sit in that posture, like not everybody can sit cross-legged, that's okay. You can sit in a chair. You can even lie down. You can meditate standing up. So any posture is actually possible for meditation. It does need to be comfortable. For example, I once met a woman who had, I don't know what her problem was with her back. She had pain, whether she was sitting down or even lying down. She had pain. The only posture that wasn't painful for her was standing up. So she did her meditation standing up, and that's fine. Maybe a little more challenging, but you do need to find the posture that works for you, not too painful. And then motivation. So after sitting in the good position, you settle your mind, calm down, you can do some breathing meditation for a while to calm your mind down, and then generate a positive motivation. I talked about that in the last class, so if you missed that, you can catch up. The different kinds of motivations. And as we learn more about the Lam Rim, then this idea of motivation will become more clear once we know what are the possible goals or aims that we can achieve through doing meditation. The highest one is enlightenment, becoming a Buddha for the benefit of all beings. And so if you're comfortable with that, you can bring that in and think, I'm meditating to become enlightened, help all living beings. But if you're not familiar with that idea, not yet sure if that's what you want to do, try to at least have a altruistic motivation. For example, just to think, I want to do good, like we did at the start of the session. I want to help people and I want to help the world. I want to do good. And I'm meditating in order to have more positive energy in myself so that I can share that with others in the world. So something like that. You can use your own mind, your own thoughts, your own words, but it should be something positive and beneficial as your reason for doing meditation. Okay, the next slide. So we're continuing to look at the topic of the precious human life or precious human rebirth, which we started last week. And there are many different points to this topic. The first one is to actually identify what is a precious human life, because it's not just any human life. Not all human beings have a precious human rebirth. So it's identified or characterized by 18 qualities or 18 characteristics. The first are the 8 freedoms. So we went through those last week. And then there's the 10 opportunities. Sometimes they're called richnesses or endowments or fortunes, but I'm using the word that was in the book, The Easy Path. And so these are 10 pluses, 10 good things that one has with a precious human rebirth that enable us to use our life in good ways to benefit ourselves and others, especially in terms of the Dharma. So we'll go through these. And they're divided into 2 groups. The first 5 are personal, meaning they have to do with ourself, our own situation, our body and our mind. So the first is being a human being. And it's said that having a human life, being a human being out of all the different life forms there are, is the most conducive for spiritual practice, in terms of Buddhism. As a human being, we have the ability to cultivate positive qualities such as compassion for all living beings, loving kindness for all living beings, the wisdom, understanding the true nature of things. So other types of beings, other life forms are more challenged to be able to understand the Dharma, put it into practice, and cultivate these qualities. So that's something to think about. If you have a pet, for example, a cat or a dog, you could, just compare your life with theirs and mainly your level of intelligence and your ability to understand things and put things into practice. For example, if you tried to explain to your dog or your cat about karma, and there's good karma and there's bad karma, and you should try to create good karma and avoid bad karma, would they be able to understand and, follow follow those ideas? Anyway, so this is something to think about, something to check out. So we're fortunate just to be a human being. And the second is living in a central land. So there's different ways of explaining what is a central land. The usual way is in traditional Buddhism is it's a place where you have the 4 kinds of Buddhist followers. The Buddha himself talked about this, that, he intended to, have these four types of followers. The first two are lay men and lay women. So men and women who are lay people, not monastics, and they keep the 5 precepts. Not killing, not stealing, and so on. So they take refuge and they live according to the 5 precepts. So that's 2. And the other 2 are male and female monastics, specifically fully ordained men and women, bhikshus and bhikshunis is the Sanskrit terms. So the Buddha established these 4 types of followers. He explained, how you become one of these 4 types of followers. And they do still exist in the world today. There are in the world, and even here in the United States, we have all 4 types of people. We have lay men and lay women who are keeping the 5 precepts. We also have fully ordained monks and fully ordained nuns. In America, if we consider America as a whole. Maybe in your hometown where you live, you may not have all 4 of those type of people, but they do exist in America. So we can say America is a central land. And the book actually gives a different explanation of central land, which is more according to Buddhist cosmology. I won't go into that. It's a little bit complicated. But anyway, so the reason it's important to live in a central land is because if those 4 types of people are existing in an area, then they are holding the Buddhist teachings and they are holding the Buddhist practices. And that means you or anyone who wants to can learn from them, can learn Buddhist teachings and Buddhist practices. And if they want to take vows or precepts, they can do so. So that's why it's beneficial. If those 4 types of people didn't exist in a particular place, then it would be much more difficult to learn and practice, and especially to take precepts. Precepts are vows that we take for life that help to make sure we are living our life in a beneficial way. We're refraining from harmful actions like killing, stealing, and so forth, and putting our energy into positive, virtuous actions that are good for us and good for others. And the third one is having all your senses functioning properly. So we have 5 physical senses, seeing, hearing, and so forth. And we also have the 6th sense, which is the mental sense, mental consciousness. And that includes our thoughts and our emotions and so on. So of the 6 senses, the 6th is the most important for Dharma. That's the one we use to understand, to study and understand and practice and meditate and so on. So if any of our senses, well, some of the senses aren't so important and wouldn't be a problem if they weren't functioning properly, but the 6th sense is very, very important. So for example, if somebody has a brain injury or their brain just never developed properly, and so they're just not able to develop a good understanding of the Dharma and practice the Dharma, that would be a big obstacle. So we're fortunate if we have all these senses functioning properly. It again helps us to practice. And the 4th one is not having committed the 5 heinous actions, also known as the 5 actions of immediate retribution. So these are killing your mother, killing your father, killing an arhat. An arhat is someone who has attained nirvana. So it's a very highly accomplished being. Wounding a Buddha. You don't even have, you try to kill a Buddha, but you wound them. That's also very negative. And the 5th is causing a division, a schism in the Sangha. That means a community of Buddhist followers. If you cause division so that they break into 2 groups, then that's also considered a very negative action. So it's said that there's no negative action that is so bad that it cannot be purified. We'll learn more about that later, how we can purify our negative karma. So it is possible to purify any negative action that we do, but these 5 are particularly negative. And if we've done any of them, then it just becomes very difficult for our mind to make progress in that lifetime. You know, there's a lot of obstacles in the mind to being able to develop realizations. So we're lucky if we've managed to avoid committing those. But even if you have, even if you did kill your mother or your father, it's not the end of the world. You can still develop yourself spiritually. You can purify that karma, and everyone eventually has the ability to reach enlightenment. But doing these actions will just make it more difficult, take longer. And then the 5th is having belief in the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, meaning that at least we're open and willing to consider the Buddhist teachings, even if we may have doubt about certain aspects like rebirth or karma or the possibility of enlightenment. It's okay to have doubts, but as long as our mind is at least open and we're willing to learn and think about and consider the Buddhist teachings. Because there are some people whose minds are completely closed to Dharma, and sometimes they don't even have any good reason for having such a state of mind, maybe just because it's weird, it's foreign, or they've been told that anything other than their own religion is the work of Satan. Some people have that idea. And then there's some people who just have no interest at all in any religion or spiritual path. They don't see any point. They think it's just superstition. It's just rubbish. There's no value, no meaning. They don't need it. So many people have that kind of attitude, like their mind is just closed. So at least if we have an open mind and an interested mind, we want to learn the Dharma, and we're able to accept at least some of the Buddhist teachings. That's very important. So we need to check these 5, if we have them or not. And even if we don't have them, it's possible to change. We can work on some of these at least and change them so that we do have them. So then the second 5, the last 5, are related to others or the external situation. The number 6, a Buddha has come to the world. So according to Buddhism, planet Earth isn't the only place in the universe where there is life or intelligent beings. Buddhism says there's many other worlds and many other kinds of beings, many of whom are even more intelligent than we are. And but a Buddha, someone who knows the Dharma and teaches the Dharma, doesn't always come to every world, not because of lack of compassion or concern, but because the karma of beings in that particular world at that particular time is just not ready. The people wouldn't be ready to learn the Dharma. So in our case, in our world, a Buddha did come and lived in this world for a period of time, attained enlightenment, and taught the Dharma. So this means Dharma is available in our world, which is actually the 7th point. So it also happens sometimes a Buddha might come in the world and live in the world, but doesn't necessarily teach the Dharma, the path. So again, it's not because of a lack of compassion, but because the people, their minds wouldn't be ready to learn it. So that's not the case in our world. The Buddha came, taught the Dharma, and people were ready for it. They listened, they learned. Many of them attained the realizations that Buddha explained. And then the 8th point is the teachings are still there. They remain and they are flourishing. So that's the case right now in the world. There's still the availability of the Buddha's teachings. They are being learned and practiced and transmitted. So that's actually number 9. There are people who practice and teach the Dharma. So it's not just in books. like ancient knowledge, like the knowledge of the Egyptians, which, you can learn about that, but nobody is actually practicing it and transmitting it. Nobody fully understands it. So that isn't the case with Buddhism. Buddhist teachings are still very much alive. People are studying them, meditating on them, practicing them, and gaining realizations. So we're very fortunate that that is the case in our world, because it isn't the case everywhere in the universe. And the 10th opportunity is that there are kind people who care for practitioners. So if one does wish to devote oneself to the study and practice of the Dharma, especially in the case of becoming a monastic, because if we become monks and nuns, ideally we shouldn't go to work. We should just spend our time studying and practicing. But then we need help from people to support ourselves, to have food and other necessities. So that's the tradition in Asia, that the lay Buddhists will support the monks and nuns so they don't have to work and they can practice. So that's still the case today, that there are people who are happy to care for those who are practicing the Dharma so that they can practice and not starve and not die of cold. And it's quite amazing that even in a country like America, which is not a Buddhist country, I mean, it's just a very small minority of people here who are interested in Buddhism. But even in America, there are people who are willing to support practitioners, which is proved by my experience here at Sravasti Abbey. There's about 20 people living here now, and we're fully supported by lay people, kind people who care about us. And so they send us food and toilet paper and everything else that we need so that we can just stay here and study and practice. And of course, we do repay their kindness by teaching the Dharma and so on. But it's just wonderful to see that, that this is still very much a reality in the world. So the point here is, if we check and we find that we have all 10 of these conditions in our life, in our world, then this is something very, very fortunate, very positive, very beneficial. Now, some people might look at this list of 10 opportunities and also the 8 freedoms and think that it sounds like Buddhists are biased and maybe even arrogant, because they seem to be saying, well, if you have the chance to learn and practice Buddhism, you are fortunate. But if you don't, then you are unfortunate. So it is true that this is very much based on the idea that having the chance to learn Buddhism and practice Buddhism is very special. And if you have that chance, you are fortunate. And probably all religious traditions have similar ideas. They think our religion is best, and people who belong to our religion are fortunate. And they may even go so far as to say, only those who follow our religion will be saved. Outsiders are unfortunate, and they may even go to hell. And there may be some Buddhists who have similar kind of attitude, because Buddhists are just human beings after all. However, putting down other religions, saying our religion is best, other religions are lousy, is not a correct Buddhist attitude. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama clearly shows that. He shows a great deal of respect and expresses respect for all other religions. And I'll just read one quote from His Holiness. This is from the book Approaching the Buddhist Path. While big differences exist among their philosophies, all religions agree on the good qualities for human beings to develop. For some people, the Buddhist philosophy is more effective in cultivating these good qualities. For others, the doctrine of another religion is more helpful. Therefore, from the viewpoint of an individual, each person will see one philosophy as true and one religion as best for him or her. But looking at all of society, we must accept the diversity and plurality of religions and of views of truth. So basically he's saying, there's no one best religion that everybody should accept, everybody should follow. That's not the Buddhist view. Each person needs to, if they want to follow a religion, they need to check out different religions and determine for themselves which one is best for me, which one fits me, that I can believe in, that I can follow, that I can benefit from. But this text, being a Lam Rim text, it was written by Buddhists and for Buddhists. The intended audience of this text was people who are, already Buddhists. And so naturally, the approach is that if you have the chance to learn Buddhism, practice Buddhism, then you're very, very fortunate. But this isn't just because of blind faith or bias, but rather it's in line with the Buddhist worldview, the Buddhist view of things. And this becomes more clear if we look at the next topic, which is the importance or the value of the precious human rebirth. So if we could look at the next slide. So why is a precious human rebirth precious? What's the big deal? So there are 3 points that are explained in the Lam Rim. The first is called temporary importance. And this means we can use our precious human life to attain good rebirths in our future lives. So, according to Buddhism, this isn't the only life we have. This is just one life in a series of lives that goes back in the past and goes on in the future. And so we will have another life after this and another life after that, and so on until we free ourselves from this whole cycle. So we're going to have another life next time. And naturally, we want good experiences. We don't want suffering, bad experiences. And according to Buddhism, what kind of life we have, what kind of experiences we have are up to us. We are the creators of our own experience, depending on how we act, what kind of karma we create. So it's in our hands whether we have a good life next time or not. We need to, if we do want to have a good rebirth, we need to create the right causes. And then basically the causes are virtue, good karma, and refraining from non-virtue, bad karma. So if we have a precious human rebirth, we have the opportunity to do that. We can learn about karma, we can learn about virtue, and use our life to create virtue and refrain from non-virtue. And in that way, we're creating the cause for a good rebirth rather than an unfortunate one. Now, this isn't exclusive to Buddhism because other religions also contain methods for how, well, they would call it heaven, going to heaven or something like that, rather than rebirth. But yeah, they also have teachings on how to live your life in such a way that when death happens, you will go to heaven, be with God, have good experiences rather than hell, where you would have a lot of suffering. So by following those religions, following the guidance of those religions, one can also have a good situation in the next life. And then the second importance is ultimate importance. And this means we can use it to attain liberation and enlightenment. So the reason this is called ultimate rather than temporary, the first one, temporary, is because if we have a good rebirth in our next life, it's another rebirth. It's another life that will last a certain amount of time, and then it will come to an end, and again we will die, and again have to go to another life, another rebirth. So it's just a temporary benefit, something achieved temporarily. Whereas in the case of the ultimate goals of liberation and enlightenment, once they are attained, once a person attains one of those goals, then there's no coming back. It's like a final goal that you don't lose after a while. Once you attain liberation, that's it. You will never take rebirth again. You will never suffer again. And the same with enlightenment. Once attaining enlightenment, that's it. You'll never lose that, never fall back from that. So that's why those are called ultimate. So if we have a precious human life, a precious human rebirth, we have the means to achieve these goals. Because in the Buddhist teachings, they are explained. The Buddha himself achieved these goals and knows how they can be attained. So he explained them, how to attain liberation, how to attain enlightenment. So that's why it's considered precious to have all the conditions to learn the Buddhist teachings, because they do contain the methods for becoming free once and for all from suffering and the causes of suffering, and never have to take rebirth again. So if you're new to Buddhism, you may have doubt about this, but my experience, the more I learn, the more I study, the more I think and meditate on these teachings, the more I do feel convinced that this is true. Not that I've achieved these goals, I'm still very far from them, but they just make a lot of sense. The Buddhist teachings make a lot of sense to me. And then the third bullet point is each moment is precious. What this means is even in a single moment or a minute, it's possible to do something that is beneficial, that creates virtue, creates merit, and creates the cause for good rebirths, creates the cause for nirvana, enlightenment. So just for example, if we're inspired by the idea of bodhicitta, wishing to become enlightened, to help all living beings, and we generate that in our mind, and then we do something without motivation, like giving food to a hungry animal or to a hungry person, or offering a candle or a piece of incense to the Buddha with that motivation. I want to become a Buddha too, to help all living beings. So that action only takes a very short amount of time, but it becomes incredibly powerful because of that motivation of bodhicitta, because of the beautiful state of mind that we have. And so, it's very precious. So there's a quotation at the bottom from a text called The 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva. And this kind of sums up the idea of a precious human life and how to use it. It says, having gained this rare ship of freedom and fortune, that means the precious human rebirth, hear, think, and meditate unwaveringly night and day in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So we're probably not at the point where we can meditate night and day, but even just spending 5 minutes a day doing some practice is already something very, very good. And the more you cultivate your wish for attaining enlightenment and the other qualities that will help you reach enlightenment, the more you become like a bodhisattva, the more energy you have. So there are people who do this. For example, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he devotes himself night and day, he doesn't even sleep, to benefit all sentient beings and help all sentient beings to reach enlightenment. So it's not impossible. It's possible. It's doable. There are people who do it. But we just need to practice in whatever way works for us. So that's, the way of thinking of someone who does accept the precious human rebirth and is motivated by that. Okay, so moving along, the next point is the difficulty of finding a perfect human rebirth, precious human rebirth. Now, this is important to counteract possible attitudes we may have, such as complacency, thinking, yeah, I have this life and no big deal. Lots of other people have it as well. Nothing special about it. Or even a sense of laziness. One might think, yeah, I can really see the benefit of doing study and practice and meditation on the path to enlightenment. But this lifetime right now, I'm just so busy. I have my job, I have my career, I have my family, I have so many things to do. I just don't have time. So I'll leave it for next life. Next life, then I'll get serious about practicing the Dharma. Well, that's not very wise, because it's actually not easy to have a precious human rebirth. It's very rare. So there's different reasons why it's rare. One is in terms of causes, because any kind of rebirth that we have is the result of causes and conditions. So if we have one this lifetime, that means in past lives, we created these causes to have a precious human rebirth. And if we want to have another one in the next life, we have to make sure we're creating those causes now. So the main cause is ethics. The bottom line of ethics is to refrain from 10 non-virtuous actions like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and so forth. So there's certain actions that are non-virtuous. We need to consciously, deliberately refrain from those and practice the opposite, not killing, live our lives in a non-violent, non-harmful way as much as possible. We'll learn more about that when we get to the topic of karma. But that's the main cause for a human life, especially a precious human rebirth. So we ask ourselves, am I creating those causes now? Am I living ethically? Maybe sometimes, but maybe not always. Another cause is giving, generosity, willing to share what we have with others who are more needy, making offerings and so forth. So am I doing that? Am I practicing that? Patience, learning to curb our anger, overcome our anger, manage our anger, not just act it out. So those are the main causes. And another cause is actually making prayers, to actually pray to have such a rebirth in our next life. So we need to check, am I creating those causes now? How many people in the world are creating those causes? So that can give us a sense that, yeah, actually not so easy. And it's not guaranteed that next time we will have a human life with all these qualities. Another way to consider this, bullet point number 2, is analogy or illustrations. I already told the story of the blind tortoise. This came from the Buddha, where he said, there's this blind tortoise coming up to the surface of this huge ocean once every 100 years. And there's a golden yolk on the surface, floating here and there, always moving around. So what are the chances the tortoise is going to put its head through the ring? Very unlikely. So in a similar way, being able to find a human life and have all the other conditions to be able to learn and practice the Dharma is actually quite rare. And the third way of considering this is numbers. So this counteracts people's objections who might say, but wait a minute, there's so many human beings in this world. There's almost 8 million now, and it's increasing all the time. And we actually have kind of a population explosion. But not all the 8 million or billion human beings on this planet have a precious human rebirth. The actual number who have all the 18 characteristics is probably very small. And even if there are a lot of human beings in this world, that's still a smaller number than animals, because animals includes mammals, fish, reptiles, birds, insects. Okay, so there's so many of those that we wouldn't be able to count them. It's impossible to count the number of animals in this world. So there's far more animals than there are human beings. And then Buddhism talks about another kind of being, which are called pretas, or hungry ghosts, hungry spirits. We can't see those, but it's said that there are more beings in that realm than animals. There's even more hungry ghosts than animals. And then the lowest realm in terms of fortune is hell. That's the place of the greatest amount of suffering. And it said there are more beings in hell than there are hungry ghosts. So if we compare the number of human beings to these other kinds of beings, we're actually fewer in number, meaning it's more difficult to take a human life, to be born as a human being, than it is to be born in one of these other realms. And the last bullet point, I was just thinking about this, because in science they say that just in our human body, like we are one human being, we have this one human body, but living in our body is actually home to lots of bugs. They say there's little spiders, tiny little spiders living on our face, living in the pores of our skin. If you're interested, it'll gross you out if you look at the pictures of these things, but you can go online and type in bugs in our body, and you'll see pictures of these creatures that live on our body, and also in our intestines. So there could be thousands or millions or even billions of creatures just living on this one human body. So that again gives a sense of, wow, yeah, humans are relatively rare compared to other kinds of beings. So when this life comes to an end and our mind is off searching for another life, another rebirth, there's a lot more openings, a lot more job openings, life openings in these other realms, like the animal realm and so on, than there are in the human realm. Especially now, many women don't want to have children. Many human women choose not to have children. So that makes it also a little more difficult to have a human life, a human body. So anyway, the point of this is don't take your life for granted. Don't be complacent. Don't be lazy. Value the life that you have now and use it well. Since there's no certainty when this life comes to an end, we will have again the same opportunities we have in this lifetime. So we should really use it. Now, this shouldn't lead us to feel frantic and anxious and, stressed out, like, ideally, the attitude we have for practice is calm and peaceful, consistent, just doing the best we can in our life to practice as much as we can. And we will learn as we go on through the Lam Rim what it actually means to practice, what it actually means to use our human life wisely and beneficially. So the more we learn about Buddhism, the more we will learn about how to do that. So that's it for today. There's quite a bit of material there to think about, but hopefully you will find time between now and next week to think about that. So there's some homework. I'm asking you to read the next section of the book, and that's going into the next topic of meditation, which is death and impermanence. So there's just 6 pages there. That's a very, very powerful topic. It really boosts our energy to learn and practice the Dharma. And also investigate your reasons for being interested in meditation and Buddhism. So that's looking at the whole thing of motivation. Why do I want to learn Buddhism? Why do I want to learn meditation? And be honest. Check to see if they're altruistic or they're more selfish, worldly. And can you change? Is it possible to change whatever reasons we might have had initially? can we change those and make them more positive, more altruistic? And then do some meditation on what we've looked at in this topic. So the details of this are on the homework sheet. Also on the homework sheet, there's a couple of links to some courses that are coming up. I'm going to be teaching a course here, a weekend course on death and dying. So if you're more interested in that topic, we'll have a whole weekend. That's the 1st and 2nd of May. So you can join that online. There's a link to that. And the following weekend, 7, 8, 9 of May, I'm going to be teaching a course on Introduction to Tantra. So that's something I've mentioned. It's also mentioned in the book. You might be curious about what Tantra is all about. This will just be an introductory course, just to answer some of those questions. And it's being offered by a center in Spain. So the hours here in America will be early morning, not too early, reasonably early, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you're interested in those, you can see them on the... Okay, so yeah, we pretty much run out of time. I can see a couple of questions there. So I don't have time to answer them, but if those could be sent to me, and I will, give an answer in the next class. I guess I do have 2 minutes. Okay, one question is, an illustration of a realization. What's an illustration of a realization? Well, even the precious human rebirth, if we meditate on that, and if we get to the point where we really feel my life is so precious, it's so meaningful, I can do so many good things with my life, and I really want to do that. And that gives us energy, motivation to live our life in a beneficial way, especially, learning the Dharma, practicing the Dharma, helping others as much as we can, creating the causes for these higher states of mind, especially enlightenment. So that's a realization. That's an example of a realization. It takes a while to get a realization. You need to, learn and think about and meditate on, but slowly your mind changes and you think differently. You have a different way of thinking, different way of viewing yourself and your life, and so on. So it doesn't necessarily mean bing, you suddenly have this explosion in your mind of wow, it can be kind of small, but it's life-changing, something that changes you and changes your life. And that's just one example, but there's many realizations that we have as we go along in the path. Okay, so we better end there. Some people probably have to go. And as mentioned before, there's a meditation tomorrow morning led by Venerable Dundrup for those who would like to, who have the time and interest to follow that. So let's just close by making a dedication of the positive energy, the merit we've created during this session, just as we had in the beginning, the motivation to do something beneficial for ourselves, for others, for the world, for all beings. So let's dedicate our energy to that same goal. Whatever we've learned, whatever we've gained, whatever positive energy we've created, may it be shared by all beings everywhere to help them be free of suffering and the causes of suffering, help them have genuine peace and happiness, ultimately enlightenment. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day. See you next week. So Mary or someone, can you send me the questions in the chat box? Okay, thank you.